Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee. So it's hot, man. It's about 94 degrees outside, or no, 98 degrees outside. Sorry. Heat index is 108 or something like that. Not as hot as it has been, but man, it's hot. And 98 degrees in here. I got a fan. That's about all I got. Anyway, haven't been doing a whole lot on the old Cubs. Today I started back up on it again. Last weekend I went to a trail jam at Loretta Lynn's ranch here in Middle Tennessee, and I brought home some hardware for my Jeep. So my Tesla powered Jeep brought home Tennessee Trail Jam 2022 Best Build prize, which is really neat. It's just a bunch of parts, and it's really cool. It's like the coolest trophy ever. But that's what I did last weekend, and this week I had all great aspirations while I was at work to come home and get to working out here on this thing, but it's hot. So anyway, enough complaining. So what have I done so far? Well, if you will recall, I've had to dramatically modify hydrostatic transmission part of the transaxle. I had to modify it so that I could have a direct drive into the differential. And my other Cub Cadet had a 3-speed, and its gear ratios are not the same as the transmission on the hydrostat. If it's direct drive, the transmission on the hydrostat is 25-1. The tallest gear, I guess you'd say third gear, on the manual transmission was like 30-1. So with it being 30-1, I would need to have some sort of differential between the front and the back axles, and that's fine, except that if I end up in a situation where the front tires lose traction for whatever reason, I got a heavy load and I got a lot of torque, and it's picking the front wheels up off the ground, maybe, then they would just sit there and spin, and I wouldn't get any traction at all. So that's no good. And if I don't have a way of making a locking center differential, then I can't do that. So I don't want to do that. I want both differentials to be the same ratio, and I'll end up having the same tires on the front and back. So I found me another hydrostatic transmission and modified it also. As a brief confusing recap, this bottom part you see right here, this used to be much taller, and the engine output shaft went like this into the input shaft of this hydrostatic transmission, and there was a pump. There was a hydraulic pump, first stage pump, and it made about, I don't know, we're going to say 300 psi. So it took the hydraulic fluid from the sump of the differential, pumped it up, and then pumped it down into the hydraulic pump of the hydrostatic transmission. Now this hydraulic pump on the hydrostatic transmission has what's called a swedge plate under it. I just think of it like a ramp, and so it's variable. So if you that doesn't make any sense. We'll just say that if you move the lever forward, it sends hydraulic fluid from the hydraulic pump to the hydraulic motor, and then it turns the gears in such a way that you go forward. If you pull the lever backwards, the pump pumps fluid in the opposite direction, sends it to the hydraulic motors, and then the motor turns in the opposite direction. Anyway, that's how it was. So this was a bunch taller, and it had a whole bunch of stuff out here in front. So I took the bottom half of that, which has the input shaft into the transmission, and it sticks out right here behind this coupler, and then the input shaft going into the first stage pump has a bearing on it, and the bearing on it is the same size as the input shaft on the bottom part here. So I cut that bearing out, and a seal, there's a bearing and a seal there, cut that bearing out, machined it down so that it would fit inside here, and that's what these 3 little Allen head bolts are. They hold that bearing, so that holds the front of this input shaft rigid. The back of the input shaft going into the transmission has a big bearing on it, so that part's held rigid. So this is just basically straight. This is straight shot through. And the way this is going to work, I actually have these set up backwards. But what will happen is there'll be a drive shaft from here. It'll go to a pulley, which I'll show you in a minute. It'll go up to a motor. And then this drive shaft will continue on through the pivot point, through some universal joints and a slip joint, and it'll go to the other transmission. I haven't specified which way is front and back yet, because I don't know. I don't know which frame I'm going to set up as the front or the back. At the moment, I have that frame sort of set up as the back, and that frame over there would end up being the front, but I don't know just yet. I also don't know where I'm going to put the motor, if I'm going to have the motor driving mounted to the back transmission or the front transmission. I don't know. And I don't know where the batteries are going to go. They're going to go on the opposite side of wherever the motor is, most likely. But depending on how long this thing is, I may be able to sling the batteries underneath the frame, and that would just kind of be nice. First of all, it'd get it out of the way, and it would lower my center of gravity. Now, I'll use my little mock-up. This is a mock-up of a Tesla Model S battery. It's a lot less expensive and a lot lighter. So what could happen is this could be mounted like down here on one of them and on the bottom of the other one also, and then just have a cable running between the two to put them in series. And then the battery that's on the bottom of the frame that has the motor and controller in it, then you just have the battery cables from that battery go up to the controller, and then it would do all the controlling of motor things that it does. But I don't know yet. I also got these big old fat wheels and tires when I got that other hydrostat. These are 12-inch wide rims as opposed to the factory 8.5-inch wide rims. And what I'm thinking I might do is I might leave these as the back tires and then put the sort of skinny ones in the front, because I think it'd look cool. You know, and yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. But yeah, I need to get new tires anyway. These ones don't hold air. I guess I could go have a tube put them in and they'd hold air. But I do need new tires for those ones. The other problem is that these tires are 26 inches tall, and these ones are 23 inches tall. And you can't get 26-inch by 8.5-inch by 12 tires, but you can get 23 inches tall by 12 inches wide by 12-inch tires. So what I'll do is I'll get a set of 23 850 12s for the front and a set of 23 12 12s for the back, and that'll be kind of cool. Yeah, so that's what's gonna happen. And let's see, what else? Also, when I was mocking this up just a minute ago, I was running the bolts through this. This is what actually bolts to the frame. The frame rails go right here, and the bolt goes straight through it. Kind of like that right there. And one of the bolts wouldn't tighten up. I didn't know if the threads were stripped or what was going on, so I had to take all this apart and get this axle tube off. And it turns out the inside of that bolt, it's a blind hole, so it doesn't go, it's not exposed. It doesn't go all the way through. It's not a through hole. And that was all full of muck and mud and stuff, so I had to like get a little pick in there and clean the goop out of there. But there was also still mud in the threads, so I needed to kind of go through and chase those threads out. Problem with that is, on a blind hole, you need a blind tap. It's a tap specifically designed for those. It's a 3/8 16 thread tap, and I've got plenty of those, but I don't have any blind ones. So what you can do is get your handy dandy little angle grinder and just grind the tip off of it. Just grind the tip off of your traditional tap. And as long as you're just chasing threads, this will work just fine. If you're in a mill, this will work fine for running threads, but for cutting threads. But if you're just chasing them, then this will work fine with a drill. But then, yeah, so you just cut the end of it off, cut the pointy end off, and then you're just stuck with straight threads and a blunt tip with dirt all over it. Yeah, straight threads and a blunt tip. And then you can just go in there and you can tap a blind hole and make the threads good. So that's where we are. That's what I'm doing. Made a hell of a mess doing that. It's taken all morning to do that. But so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and put that new red transmission on this frame. Put these two frames kind of close to each other. Get my little chair, my glass of ice Kool-Aid, and a fan, and look at it for a little while and try and figure out what I'm going to do. One thing I want to avoid doing is end up with a really, really long vehicle. This is how, I mean, that's obviously how long the original tractor was. So I'd like to, as best as possible, maintain that length, because I do want to be able to drive around trees and stuff the way that I do with my existing lawnmower. And maybe I'll be able to do that if I can have the hinges. If I can have the hinge turn tight enough, then it'll make a really tight turning radius, and that would be fabulous. Speaking of turning, yeah, so I need to figure out how I'm going to sit on this. Let's assume this is the back. I got to figure out where I'm going to sit, where my feet are, and some sort of a steering column. And I think what I might end up doing is right here. The two steering gearboxes that were in the Cub Cadets were kind of shot. They're all worn out, and you can get new ones. But I think there's going to be quite a lot of force to turn this thing, because normally what guys will do is they'll use a hydraulic ram, and they'll turn it, use hydraulics to turn it, and they'll have a rotary controller at the steering wheel. But I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to try and avoid having hydraulics if I can. But what I do have is, this is just a 90-degree bevel gearbox. It's out of an old Rokon two-wheel drive motorcycle. So what I might be able to do is put a steering column on there with a steering wheel up here, and then whenever you turn that, it turns the output. And so if I steer it this way, it'll make the output go that way. And then at the end of this, I could have like a bell, like an arm that pushes and pulls on the front half of the tractor. But that will have a lot of torque. I'm certain that will have a lot of torque, especially if I'm like, in a mud or something, or if I'm in a sticky situation. So what this is right here, this is an electric power steering gearbox out of a Versa, Nissan Versa. I have one of these things on my Jeep, and it's just out of a Prius, and it's really, really strong. It has plenty of power to steer 31-inch 1050 tires in off-road conditions. I mean, ask me how I know. I tried it last weekend and it worked fabulously. It's amazing how strong these things are. But this one's out of a Versa, a much heavier car. So what happens is the steering input is down here. That's a lie. The steering input is right here, and then there's a sensor underneath here that detects how much torque you've applied. So there's like a little rubber coupling inside here, and when there's little teeth on this side, and there's teeth on this side with a rubber coupling in the middle, and there's a sensor that measures the distance between those teeth. So if those teeth squeeze together, this thing says, oh, you would like to turn, so I'm going to help. And then it helps, and as soon as it starts helping, that distance disappears, so it doesn't help as much. So it constantly and variably assists your steering needs. And if this thing should ever fail, since you do have that coupling between the two, there is actually a mechanical connection. If this thing were to ever fail, you still have steering. So it's not like a hydraulic system where if you lose your hydraulics, you're sunk. So what'll probably happen is maybe this thing, where all our angles are off right now, but this thing will come from me. This will be my input right there. It'll go down through here. That'll attach to the input of this thing, and then the output of this thing will have my little arm on it, and then that arm will reach forward to the front half of the tractor and push it. Push it if it wants to, go left or right, or pull it, depending on which way I want to go. Anyway, that's kind of my thought. All that stuff has to fit. It's a pretty compact little dude right here. This is for the collapsible steering wheel, and so I don't really even need that. I can pull this off completely and then just use this part right here. This has the splines for that. Cut that shaft off wherever I need it, and I could make this that long if I wanted to, so this whole assembly is only that long. And then in here you could conceivably see that it could maybe fit. I don't know. I'm talking out loud now. So that's kind of the process that I go through, just thinking way ahead, and thinking even further ahead than that. No, we'll save that for another time. So that is the update. That's what I'm up to. I'm gonna keep on doing this today until I pass out from heat exhaustion, and then I guess when I wake up, I'll get back at it again. So, as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.